80s coming back this week. I'm not big into the 80s. And I was born in the 80s. My kids, Nathan is one of those, he loves the 80s, and he'll ask me, what's the best thing that came out of the 80s? Of course, being my dad's son, me. I say that. And he goes, no, really? Ouch. Okay, well, I don't know. There's a lot of different things. But it's been warm out there, but we are grateful that the Lord's given us some spell from it. And maybe here soon we'll get some of that fall-like weather. Well, we're looking at the life of Jesus and looking more about Jesus. And we've kind of been looking at his Sermon on the Plain. And so we're in chapter 6 of Luke still. Last time we looked at the Sermon on the Plain, the Beatitudes that's mentioned there, as well as the woes. So the blessed versus the woes. But here we're about to go into another area. An area that definitely would have shocked some of Jesus' listeners. An area that, quite frankly, is misused and abused today and misunderstood. And that is love. Love. And especially loving those that don't come close to liking you. We'll be looking at verses 27 through 36. And I'm going to go ahead and read the first portion up to about 31, and then we'll do the second portion. He said, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. To him who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask them back. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise." There's a lot here that we actually have to unpack, because when we read it from a modern perspective, we're thinking one thing, and it's like, wow. But when you look at it from the ancient perspective, it makes a little more sense. It still pushes us, though. He starts off by saying to love your enemies. Now, the Old Testament made clear you should love your neighbor. Now, Jesus is asked in a separate time later in Luke about what's the greatest teaching of the Bible. What's the greatest law? And ultimately it is love God with everything. And the second's like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And then comes the question, well, who's my neighbor? Jesus' answer is really everybody. Everybody's your neighbor. And by the way, that's not easy when there's people out there that just don't like you. Now, they oftentimes accepted that you don't love your enemies, but Jesus is taking the concept of God's nature that we see in the Old Testament, and he's making it more plain. Loving your neighbor means loving everyone, including your enemy, including your adversary, including someone that you do not like. It's football Sunday. If you're a Cowboys fan, you need to love the Carolina Panthers today. If you're a Panthers fan, you need to love that. We don't like doing that, but that may be the easiest way without getting personal to use the concept. To love others. He says, do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. Now, to love your enemies, there are three things that we can see right here that help us understand what that will entail in action. To do good to those that hate us. Our response naturally is to one-up them. All right? I remember at church camp when I was a teenager, of all people, it was a preacher that said this, but he said, guys, I was in the military. We're here for fun. We're here for joy. He says, I don't have time for you to pull pranks. He says, I don't want to deal with it, and I'm giving you a warning. This wasn't me. I was not in the military, so I can't claim this. He said, I don't believe in getting even. I will get ahead. I'm sitting there going, man, I wasn't going to do it anyways, but I'm a little worried about this cabin. But the truth of the matter is we're supposed to do good to those that hate us. We're supposed to respond with good. He says, bless those who curse you. Speak well of them. Seek God's good upon them. Not to speak curses, God's anger and vengeance upon them. Now, we can call and pray for God's vengeance in his way and his will, but we don't need to be hateful in it. Lord, we want justice, but we pray that they'll accept mercy. That should be something that we think about. He goes on to say, and pray for those who spitefully use you. There's a lot of people that will misuse us and abuse us. I think a lot of this is more fixated within the kingdom. In other words, if we are living for God and people are mistreating us for our faith, we should not respond with hatred. We should not respond with anger. We should not respond with or sinful anger. We should not respond with cursing. We should not respond with disdain, but prayer. Now, I think we can put that in all areas of life. But you may say, but what if someone does something truly horrible and they're a threat to my family? The Bible doesn't say just let them kill your family or hurt your family. There are legal processes and protection of your family that's supposed to be there. What Jesus is saying here is not overriding other aspects. It's supposed to work within them. Someone breaks in your house in the middle of the night, you have every right to protect your family. Whether that's with a bat, whether that's with some other weapon, or whether that's barricading and calling the police, whichever way, you should protect your family. If someone is trying to intimidate you, leaving unkind gifts, what we see with Scripture here is not to go over there, beat down to the door, and burn down their house. That's not the way we're supposed to be. Hatfields and McCoy is not the kingdom. Not in any stretch. So what should we do in loving our enemies? We should do good to them. We should bless them. And we should pray for them. But that doesn't mean we should allow them to kill us. All right? There is a self-protection concept. Now, he goes a little further. He says, to him who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other also. What's interesting here is this is brought up in a separate way in the Sermon on the Mount. But there are two different words that are used because there's two different cultures in view. Okay? When Matthew's writing, he makes sure to use the word for slap, kind of a backhand. Someone slaps you or backhands you on one cheek, offer the other. In their culture, a Semitic culture, that was probably the worst of defaming a person could do to another, and you could sue them over it. You could flat out sue them for defaming your character in public. Now, in a more Gentile or Greek area where Luke is trying to connect these teachings with, that wouldn't have meant as much to them. But an actual hit to one cheek, not full hard, but an actual close fist hit, was equivalent to that kind of defamation of character. And what does he say? He doesn't say, use your legal rights and sue them. Turn the other cheek. Let them hit you. Let them defame you for my sake. That's hard for us to do because we live in a strong culture, don't we? And we have a strong history that we like, but sometimes we must admit we can't agree with everything that happens. All right? We should not respond with the same hatred that's directed towards us. There's a difference between justice, taking a stand, and responding with a mirror of anger and hatred. Too often, we can be like that. He goes on to say, and from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Now, this is very different for us. That a lot of people didn't deal with money that much in their time, okay? Coinage was reserved for special points, especially if you were poor. It may be used specifically for paying taxes or the temple tax or something of that nature. And so a lot of what many of these people would do would barter, wouldn't they? Well, in the law, there were certain things that you were allowed to sue for. And it's really actually kind of odd. You could sue someone for their outer cloak, but at nighttime you had to give it back. Why? That might be their only covers. So they had two types of clothes, generally. Underwear, tunic, and cloak, which was outerwear. All right? The poorer only had one set of each. Middle class might have a few, but not a lot. Rich, well, they're rich. You know, they oftentimes demonstrate different colors and other things like that. It's hard for us to understand why. Because you can go down to the Goodwill and buy something for $10 and have like 2 outfits or 3 outfits, right? Or a resale shop, or hand-me-downs. In other words, this isn't something we connect with. Here's the concept. If someone sues you and takes away something, don't try to stop them is the idea. Now, this isn't what we would think of in our suing, but the idea of they're trying to hurt you to intimidate you. Let them take it. Let them take it. Because we do not measure our wealth in physical things. We are wealthy in God. Now, if someone's trying to steal from you, steal from him, steal from her, steal from everyone in the community, you need to go to the law because you've got to stop them from hurting other people. If they're doing it to hurt everybody, you need to seek justice, not vengeance. All right? I like Batman as much as the next guy, but realistically, that's not the way we are. It's justice that we look for. From him who takes away from your goods, do not ask them back. Now, someone takes from me, or they've taken from me and they don't give it back, I shouldn't ask back. The idea, he's using a way that they would understand, almost hyperbolic. He's exaggerating a little bit. Why? It's a sense of forgiveness. You know what? They don't give it back. I'm not going to hold an ongoing grudge. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to forgive them, and I'm going to pray for them. But here's the thing. It's probably not going to help them as much as it's going to help me. Because until they want that forgiveness, I'm the only one that's released. They're still beholden by it. Now, when they want forgiveness, it's already offered. So on my part, I've offered it. And I think that's a lot of what's going on here. In verse 31, just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them. This is another variation of what we call the golden rule. Treat others as you would be treated. I heard or watched a movie years ago, and there's a point in it, and it's supposed to be somewhat funny, but an evil guy asks his henchman, "What did I teach you? Do to others before they do to me." That's actually what people think, isn't it? If someone cuts me off, well, I should tag them with my vehicle before they get a chance to do it to me. No, that's not what we're taught. That's not right. Let's treat them with the love that we wish they would treat us with. And once again, there's a difference between taking a stand and acting out of hatred. You can take a stand and still treat others with love. We can see that where people will discuss something and one person gets angry, the other one keeps their cool and their calm. That's not the easiest thing for us to do. But that kind of love of keeping the calm, keeping the cool, and staying on track without responding with what's called ad hominems or attacking character, that's the way we ought to be. We don't attack. We stand firm, but we're going to treat them with the kind of respect we believe is appropriate because we want that. Now, this is the first half. The second half is almost a little repetitive, which actually is very Jewish or very Hebrew-esque, because in Hebrew, it repeats stuff over and over and over. Why? It's just the way their language worked. They emphasize through repetition. They try to explain through repetition. And so it's something that for us, what do we oftentimes say? Give it to me simple and don't give it to me again. Unless it's directions. Find 3 or 4 ways to give it to me that way, because I'm not good with directions. But look with me on this, verse 32. But if you love those who love you, what credit is it that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you only love those who like you, there's nothing that comes from, there's nothing that honors God with that. He goes on, if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. You know what? Even people we would call bad people can show some concepts. We'd say, well, that's not bad, but they only do it in groups they like. Dictators that we abhor, they'll show kindness to those to people that they thought show kindness to them to an extent. Do I think that's good? I think it goes to show they're selfish, right? Because they don't show that kindness to other people. We're supposed to be different than the world around us. We're not supposed to mirror the society around us. If you lend to those, now this is where it gets interesting. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. Now we're getting into concepts that, once again, we have to unpack this. This doesn't mean lending to everybody, lending to this, lending to that. Okay. In their culture, especially Jewish law, they had certain laws on lending. The Gentiles, or the Greeks, the Romans, all those around them, they would lend only with high interest rate, as high as 48%. We call that loan sharking, right? But that was acceptable, right? The Jews were supposed to lend to one another interest-free. The only interest they were ever to charge was someone outside of their group, but even then they were supposed to show respect. Did it work that way? Just because you're supposed to do something doesn't mean you always choose to do something right. That happens in church. So we got to learn from these mistakes. But there was also times where Jews would not lend to fellow Jews when it was maybe the 6th year. Why? On the 7th year, all debts are to be forgiven. And so they would, I ain't going to do that. I'm going to lose money. The concept is actually this. You're not supposed to worry. You're supposed to know who's in need, and you lend to them. If you don't get it back, you are supposed to have taken into account what you can lose. We take all of Scripture in this. So if I'm supposed to take care of my family first and foremost, that doesn't mean I give my entire nest egg to help someone. But I can definitely give them my extra, can I not? I can be willing to afford to lose something. But if it literally hurts my children, then I didn't choose wisely there. The concept is not all about me or trying to get something. The concept is I love someone enough that I'm willing to take a loss for them. Now, does that sound like our culture? No. In our culture, if I can't make something out of it, I'm not doing it. That's not biblical. The Bible does not teach socialism. It teaches godly conscience, which is kind of this way. If I have something more and someone else doesn't, my goal is not to give to them so that way we're equal. My goal is to help them as they try to do more. My goal, let's say they're starting a small business and I can actually help them. I should help them because that's my brother. That's my neighbor. If I can help them. I know that's not what we see around us. I know there are some that claim to be Christian and will go entirely against this chapter. They don't want to talk about this chapter. Why? Because it doesn't meet what they want. Now, is it okay to go to a bank? Sure, that's an institution, but individual to individual. I have loaned money to people sometimes, and there have been many times I haven't got it back. I'm irritated, but okay, you just let it go. Some of them have been family, some of them have not. I have also learned that I cannot go too far to hurt my family in the process. I can help, but if it means taking away the money where my kids can't eat this month, well, I can't do that. There's a level, and I think that fits scripturally where it's balanced. What Jesus is talking about is a mindset that's not like the world around us. Remember the woes he gave to those that were full, because you're going to be hungry. Those that laugh, you're going to weep. In other words, we're not supposed to be like them. We're supposed to be like the kingdom. He goes on to say, but love your enemies, do good, and lend, hoping for nothing in return. And hoping there isn't like I want it, it's an expectation. Expecting you're not going to get in return. If they give it back, hey, that's good. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. Your character will demonstrate who you are. For he is kind to the unthankful and the evil. Therefore be merciful, just as your Father also is merciful. Now I want to give several concepts here. Earlier back, it did talk about those that to give to those that were in need, okay, and not get back. The idea was a beggar, but the beggars in their culture are not the panhandlers of today. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is this: they knew the people in their community that literally could not work and did not have the ability. So am I telling you don't give money to a panhandler? No, I'm saying if you don't know them, just be rest assured you're taking a risk either way. Just do the best you can. We should be able to help, but it does probably mean we need to try to get to know people, and that's not always what we feel is socially safe. And my meaning on that is we may feel uncomfortable. We may not like that. And I'm trying to work on that myself. But here's the thing. If you know that person is doing drugs, if you know that person's going to take that money straight to go get drugs or alcohol, you don't need to give them money. All right? They knew they're beggars. What Jesus is talking about is actual people in need. Help them if they're honestly in need. Part of our problem is we don't know those that are honestly in need. We can say government's the problem. We can say society's the problem. But here's the thing. It means we're going to have to get to know people. And for introverts, that's not fun. Introvert here. It's not fun. But we're supposed to try to get to know them a little better. So maybe talk with them. Maybe get to know people. And offer what you know can be useful without hurting anyone. Offer actual food. Offer actual water. They need a coat. You can get them a coat. Now, if they don't want to accept it because it's not designer label, well, then we got some other issues here. But those in actual need can be helped. You can direct them to areas where they can get further help. But here's the thing, and I saw this from another preacher, and it amazes me. He said, I would point them in that direction, help them along the way, and then I'd go and I'd see them and see how they're doing. Wait a minute. That's not normal to our culture, is it? Our culture is, I've done my part, leave me alone. Ooh, we're supposed to actually love, and love means care in that as well. Not care to accept what's wrong, but care to want them to be in the better. When Jesus finishes this and talks about, for he is kind to the unthankful and the evil, how often do we consider, why does God allow the ungodly to live? Why does God allow some of them to end up doing so well? Why does God allow some that are wealthy or some that are mean or some that are power hungry? Why does he let them do that? In a sense, it's grace. We just don't like what they do with the grace, right? I'll be the first to tell you that. But they're given the opportunity to change. Sure, most of them won't. Most of them will reject God. But nonetheless, they're given that opportunity. In those instances, even though we may be on the other side in pain and in hardship, our response shouldn't be hatred. It should be recognizing maybe it's through the prayer and living differently in the interaction that they might see the grace that's been offered to them. In response, knowing the grace, because if you really think about it, we don't deserve God's grace either. That's why it's called grace. But when you say, I'm not as bad as that person, from our perspective, but from God's perspective, we're all bad. Okay? Let me just say this, and please no one take this the wrong way, but if you open up or move a log, and under it you see all kinds of little insect critters, and I don't know about you, sometimes they give me the willies, right? You may say, this little one, this little termite right here, it's not as bad as the other one. See, that one's big. That one's causing more damage right there. They're still bugs, and they still give you the ickies. We're all sinners. God's nature cannot allow any of us to be in his presence, and justice must be done. So I can honestly say I have not done the same amount of evil by any sense as Osama bin Laden or Adolf Hitler or a serial killer. I've never done anything like that, but I'm still a sinner. Now, we believe in justice, and God demands justice, but God also offered salvation to everybody. And that means we have to love people that we may be even praying that they be brought to justice. Let me give you one instance that blew my mind. I may have told y'all this, so y'all can, I beg y'all to forgive me for repeating things, but when I taught at the prison, they got to know me pretty well. I didn't expect to be there as often, but I got to be there a little more often than I intended. And I remember it was during summer, and during summer I didn't go out there very much unless I was asked to preach in the chapel. But I wanted to go and talk to the chaplain and start getting some stuff set up for the fall semester, because you got to make preparations, right? Well, and this was several years ago, but there was someone that escaped from that actual prison. And I mean, they were saying there were sightings as far as Memphis. He was in Memphis. I promise he was not there, because that same day they caught him just about 3 miles from the prison. But they had almost roadblocks all the way, just all through there. And I thought maybe I shouldn't have come, but they let me in. They let me into the entire prison. They weren't letting anyone in, but they knew Brother Jerry, or Dr. Medlock as they called me. And I remember getting in there, and the chaplain goes, "How'd you get in here?" I don't know. I didn't think about it until I got here, and I kind of, he goes, "Man, they must really know you now." He said, "Man, everything's shut down. Almost none of the prisoners were allowed out of their barracks, and most of them had jobs and such. Everything was shut down. I mean, the warden was angry. And 2 of the guys that worked in there that were prisoners, they were allowed to come out. And they were students, and they become good friends. And one of them had been, I think, a rapist, and had committed a lot of other crimes. He was in there for life, but he was not the same man. He even told me that. He said, the man that they charged and convicted is not the man that's before them now. But he said, I do need to pay for what that man did. He said, I've been changed. And so he did not have this kind of hatred, but he said, Brother Jerry, I've been praying about this because it's been scaring me. And I'm sitting there going, how's this scaring you? And he goes, I've met this guy. This guy is as bad news gets. He's really bad. He needs Jesus. And he said, I hate to say this, but I said, I think he needs to hit rock bottom so he knows he needs Jesus. But he said, I've been praying for those that are searching for him that they don't get hurt, because this guy is that kind of desperate. I've been praying for this guy that he don't try to hurt anybody, and that he realizes he needs to just give up and actually, be allowed to be taken in with no problem. They ultimately did find him. They brought him in, and I was actually delayed for an hour and a half. I couldn't get out, and we were supposed to go to supper. So that was kind of fun. But it said something to me. This guy who had done horrible things and who had been saved, Ava, stop it immediately. He looked at a guy that he noticed was even more evil than him. Murderer. A guy that was very likely to murder more. And he cared about him. He cared about those that were looking for him. And he was praying for everybody. That's the kind of way we're supposed to be. And I'm going to be honest, that's hard. The teaching of Jesus right here is hard because our natures want to get even or ahead. But we're called to want better for those that don't even like us. How do we do that? I promise you, it's not by eking it out. It's by looking at Jesus. Jesus will bring justice. Jesus will bring proper vengeance. But here's the thing I want you to see. He prayed for those who were killing him. He prayed for those who mocked him. He demonstrated love and forgiveness to one of them on the other cross who had mocked him at first and then changed his heart. He showed forgiveness. So if we say Jesus could do it and he calls us to do it, we have no way of denying that we should do it. We are responsible to follow his example. And that's not easy. So I want you to be aware what's being mentioned here in these texts is not saying that you can't defend yourself if someone's trying to kill you. It's not saying that. It's not saying that you have to literally let someone literally take everything you have or something of that nature, or give money when you have none. No, it's not saying that. But it's saying that as God has blessed us, we ought to be willing to take a loss, because it's not all about us. You know what? If I got $30 in my pocket and it's not going to hurt me and I know someone needs help, there's nothing wrong with giving that $30. What if it's more? What if it's going to hurt more? Sometimes we got to be willing to take a loss monetarily so that way we can show the love of God publicly. There are some things we can't do. We get calls every now and then, and I can't tell you, I've lost count of how many have said, I need help, okay? And you hear it, and then you find out they want you to pay, the church to pay $5,000 to $10,000 of things for them. Here's how true. We can't. We actually, there's no, we should, we don't want to. We literally can't. And one guy got mad because we, admitted we can't, but we know some places you can go to, and he cursed out the church. Okay? Should we respond with hatred? Our response, which was honestly not easy, because it makes me mad when you talk bad about the church that I'm a part of, because I love these people. We prayed for him. Me and Liz prayed for him because I didn't know what else to do, because just hating this person wasn't going to help anything. But we literally could not pay all his bills and pay for him to stay in a hotel for 6 more months. We couldn't do that as a church. We couldn't do that as individuals or anything. Some people will want to abuse us. Sometimes we may have to honestly say no, but it's not because we don't like you or anything like that. We just can't. But love means we care. Love means we reach out. Love means we want better for them than what they're currently on. Can you love someone that you cannot like? Sure. Jesus did it. But how often do we do it? So let's put the target on us in that sense. We are responsible for us. And I know every now and then someone will say, well, that's Jesus. He was God in the flesh. He was perfect. I agree. But he called us to follow him. So we may not be perfect, but we're supposed to follow the perfect example. When we don't even try, that's dishonorable. Let us live to honor God. I'll be quiet. I think I've rambled on a few more minutes than I should have. But I'm going to be honest. Some of what Jesus says cuts to the heart. There have been times I've seen people and they're evil, and I almost rejoice in the hurt that they get. And I'm not supposed to do that. It hurts. And then people that have hurt me, it's hard for me to want them to do better. And I've actually had to fight with this. I've had to pray for them. And even admitting, Lord, I don't know how to do this because it's hard to do it because of what they did to my family or what they did to this. But I'm supposed to do that. If you're having struggles with that, that's natural. Just don't give up on that kind of love. Don't give up on trying to do what is right. God will help us in the process. And with that, let's stand and get ready to dismiss.